chapter 53. Who would have believed our report, and to whom hath the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he shot upright forth as a sapling, and as a root out of a dry ground. He had no form nor comeliness, that we should look upon him, nor beauty, that we should delight in him. He was despised and forsaken of men, a man of pains, and acquainted with disease. And as one from whom men hide their face, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely our diseases he did bear, and our pains he carried, whereas we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was wounded because of our transgressions, he was crushed because of our iniquities. The chastisement of our welfare was upon him, and with his stripes were we healed. All we like sheep did go astray, we turned every one to his own way, and the Lord hath made to light on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed, though he humbled himself and opened not his mouth, as a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and as a sheep that before her shearers is dumb. Yes, he opened not his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away, and with his generation who did reason? For he was cut off out of the land of the living, for the transgression of my people, whom the stroke was due. And they made his grave with the wicked, and with the rich his tomb, although he had done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased the Lord to crush him by disease, to see if his soul would offer itself in restitution, that he might see his seed, prolong his days, and that the purpose of the Lord might prosper by his hand. Of the travail of his soul he shall see to the full, even my servant, whom by his knowledge did justify the righteous one, to the many. And their iniquities he did bear. Therefore will I divide him a portion among the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the mighty, because he bared his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors, yet he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. All right, let's go back up to verse 1. We remember in the last chapter, God was waking up Zion. God was waking up the captive daughter even of Zion, this Jerusalem. God was saying now, put on your garments, get ready, because God is raising them up, and God is making a sign. God is telling Zion. He has sent a messenger even. Their watchmen have come to an understanding. They have sat down with God, and they have reached an understanding. And this understanding is the obedience of God's law, this covenant that he had made from the beginning, even this great covenant that God had made in the beginning. We have learned as to this point that God has made bare his holy arm. He's shown his strength now in all the earth. He showed his power, his ability to do these things. And we already know that all things on the earth God has made. God has done great things. God has made a way now. He's made a way where there was no way. God does make a way. See, in the beginning, God was trying to add to his flock, and we're going to find that is exactly what God has done. And God has made an example. God has used now and even made example throughout history, throughout time. He has declared his servant. We know who his servant is. His servant has spoken out of the book. His servant even has spoken in this manner of perception, even this manner of understanding, that so we could see that. And we see that like God, when we don't perceive an image, we don't perceive a man. We perceive the persona of a man. This is the servant of God, and what it has become is this one he's made an example out of through the course of time. And we're going to pick this up in verse 1. Who would have believed our report? Unto whom hath the arm of the Lord been revealed? And who would have believed our report? Who would have believed these things? But God has revealed his strength in the earth now, and all these things have come to pass. God has done this, even this magnificent work. He's done it so that there could be understanding in the earth, because God is the King. God is the Lord. There is no other God. He is the one. He's the one that forms up. He wants to show himself magnificent in the earth. And we see now through his great work that he has. And this example of this one, even this persona of one that has come through time, who has been revealed to us through the Word of God, too. For he shot up right forth as a sapling, and as a root out of the dry ground. He had no form, nor comeliness, that we should look upon him, nor beauty, that we should delight in him. So there was no form, there was nothing that we could see there was no beauty. One could say, hey, this one is beautiful, and because this goes back to even when Saul was chosen as the king, this one was a head above the rest. He was chosen because he was higher, and the appearance of him pleased everybody. And we would see this example was made. Then David became the king, and God said, for I am a man, I look inward. I do not look at the outward part of a man. Because God don't see things the way men see things. But he shot right forth up as a sapling, as a root out of the dry ground. This sapling here, this sapling is actually like a sucker shoot off the side of a grapevine. Even one that would be trimmed later if it didn't please. See, if this was what would happen to a sucker shoot when it come off the vine. These are those things when they tend the vine. These things are cut off so that it doesn't bring forth a new branch. And like a root out of the dry ground. And this root out of the dry ground, it's like a root that ain't going to take hold. It's like a root that's grown in a dry place that is only come forth to death. He had no form or no comeliness that we should look upon him, nor beauty. So it's not like it's a beautiful thing or a great thing, because it's like something that's going to be cut off. It's like something that's come forth in a dry place. Like we see something that's going to grow, but we know that it's only going to be trimmed off. 3, he was despised and forsaken of men, a man of pains and acquainted with disease, and as one from whom men hide their face, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. We didn't consider these things. We didn't understand these things. We didn't consider that he was being punished by God. We didn't consider these things because God had done this. God had daubed over the eyes. God had caused this, and he was stricken now throughout a period of time, being punished. See, being punished, being even brought into captivity, as we're going to find out, being brought into captivity. 4, surely our diseases he did bear, and our pains he carried, whereas we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. And these diseases are weaknesses, and as in the form of fleshful weaknesses, are pains he carried. These pains are like punishments. These things that like doing the sins in the world and going forth doing these things and being made this example. We can see it this way, that whereas we esteemed him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. And we looked upon him this way. This is how we looked at him. He's stricken of God. He's smitten of God. He's afflicted. God has afflicted this individual. God has done this. But see, God has made an example even And we see that this is the example God made to put these before you that you could understand, so that you might see. 5. But he was wounded because of our transgressions. He was crushed because of our iniquities. The chastisement of our welfare was upon him, and with his stripes we were healed. But see, this is the reason God did this, though. This is the reason God caused this punishment, and he chose them. He chose Israel as his servant in the beginning, that he could glorify himself even with his servant. And we're going to find out. See, God has revealed, God has made known. He pours out even in the earth all his understanding, because God has even made this great example in the earth. God has raised up a sign in the earth, see, and even by this made an example, so that all could have understanding. We see that God made the craftsman, see, God made the goldsmith, God made every one of them, and they did just what God told them to do. God makes an example both ways. See, God sent a sword and it divided. See, but this is also that place where God shows his strength in the earth. This is that place where God shows his magnificence in the earth. See, his power. God makes known himself in all the earth. 6. And all we, like sheep, did go astray. We turned every one to his own way, and the Lord hath made to light on him the iniquity of us all. See, these sins that we do, this what we do in the earth, has been put upon this servant, this one who has served God, even in his judgment, that has served God by being judged. 7. He was oppressed, though he humbled himself, and opened not his mouth, as a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and a sheep that is before her shearers is dumb. Yes, he opened not his mouth. They had no understanding. They went forth being used. They went forth, see, because we're not talking about one. God speaks in the sense of one, but we know that it is many. See, this, and we're going to find out, is even a generation. 8. By oppression and judgment he was taken away, and with his generation who did reason? For he was cut off out of the land of the living, for the transgression of my people, to whom the stroke was due. 8. By oppression and judgment. See, and this is how it was done, through these that had twisted and used the word of God. They had distorted it, and this is the oppression we're talking about, and the judgment we're talking about, because of their sins. They had sinned against God, and God has used now his servant to make this known in all the earth. This generation who did reason, who will declare this? Who can declare these things and say, this is it? This is the generation. This is the generation that sees the great sign. This is the generation that sees the strength of God in the earth. The transgression of my people, to whom the stroke was due. This transgression of all the earth, all the people. He's cut off out of the land of the living. The servant is cut off out of the land of the living. He's made to scorn. He's laughed. He's laughed at because he trusted in God. See, and he trusted in that the Lord would deliver him. And we're going to see God made an example of him from the beginning. Jacob, he made an example even from the beginning of him, using him. And they made his grave with the wicked, and with the rich his tomb. Although he had done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth. And they made his grave with the wicked. They said he was a transgressor. We're not talking about Jacob, man. We're talking about the persona. See, we're talking about this persona. We're talking about the persona of even Israel as a man. There was no deceit in his mouth, even though he spoke no lies. The law, see, the law is the truth. And he brought forth the law. See, this is what the servant was used to do in the beginning, bring forth the law. 10. Yet it pleased the Lord to crush him by disease, to see if his soul would offer itself in restitution, that he might see his seed, prolong his days, and that the purpose of the Lord might prosper by his hand. See, it pleased God to crush him by disease, by humility, by even punishing. Why? He was going to see if his soul would offer itself, if he would say, Lord, quit punishing in the earth, stop this. He's been brought to the lowest point. He's been brought to chirping out of the dust. God said he would do this. To see if he could have understanding, to see if he could realize that it's God who has all the power in the earth. God does this. God has the power to restore. But he done this to make an example, to see if he would make his soul a restitution, to prolong his days, that the purpose of the Lord might prosper in his hand. The purpose of the Lord might prosper in his hand. See, God's purpose was to add to his flock anyway. So God did what? He punished them twice. See, he brought them into this twice. The first time just being an example, the second time being for the redemption and the witness even into all the earth, that they might see the strength of God. 11. Of the travail of his soul he shall see to the full, even my servant, whom by his knowledge did justify the righteous one to the many, and their iniquities he did bear. This travail of his soul, work even, this work, this labor even of his soul, where God has caused now not only the flesh, but the soul to labor, to bring forth. He shall see to the full, even my servant, and the servant God has made clear is Israel. God has made this known, and he has used them through time. See, not only once, but twice now. This second great captivity being the captivity of the end time. See, even there he commands all things. Even there setting up his sign, his control, saying, I have done this. This is my strength has performed all this. See, God made the smith. God made the carpenter. 12. Therefore will I divide him a portion among the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the mighty, because he bared his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors, yet he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. God will divide a portion, see. God has already divided this portion, and we're going to find out among the great. Because God has even set up, we find that God has done these things for a reason. God has made an example of even his servant throughout time. And this is how God does it. God works in judgment. And this judgment that he uses, this judgment that he brings on, this example that he makes in the earth. See, this is even that, a portion even, that which is given over. And this intercession that was made, this intercession is one that would go now, even one who would pray for the many, even this one who would make an example of himself, so that we could have understanding. This was the one, even this one Israel, who would pour out their life even through time, who would be made the example, who God declared from the beginning what he was going to do, how he was going to do it, and it's done. See, God has done this. God has made this example. All right, we're going to move on to chapter 54.